Okay, so you have not seen Tiger King. You've not seen Tiger King. Basically, Tiger King is a docuseries about a bunch of insane people who like tigers, but also don't really care that much about the tigers. They care much more about their own personal self-aggrandizement. It features a bunch of different characters. So the main character is a guy named Joe Exotic, who is a gay polygamist who is gay with men who are straight, that he traded meth to them, allegedly, in order so they would have sex with him, and then he married them, and then one of them accidentally killed himself. Also, he runs a tiger zoo, but he also sells tigers to people around the country. He has a running feud with a woman named Carole Baskin, who proclaims that she is a tiger rights activist. She also happens to probably have killed her former husband and hates Joe Exotic and has been trying to shut down Joe Exotic's distribution of tigers for years, simultaneously claiming that she is a tiger rights activist while holding tigers in cages that don't look all that great in her own sort of private zoo where she has volunteers who work for no pay. And then there's a third character who sort of pops in as sort of an advisor to Joe Exotic named Doc. And Doc has basically a cult that he has set up of he'll have 17-year-old women intern for him, and then he will keep them in basically patties, like in stalls, until they realize they're supposed to have sex with him, and then they have sex with him, and then he makes them part of his harem and uses them as part of his draw to his little zoo. About 3/4 of the way through the docuseries, Joe Exotic starts being played and manipulated by a guy named Jeff Lowe. Jeff Lowe is a person who kind of likes tigers, but also is just straight up insane con man who wants to steal Joe Exotic zoo, it appears, pretends that he is super duper wealthy while taking out enormous amounts of debt, and has a bisexual wife with whom he carries on various cavortings in Las Vegas, and who is basically trying to get Joe Exotic ousted from his own zoo and or prosecuted so he can take over the zoo. So there are your cast of characters. Joe Exotic ends up in jail. Carole Baskin ends up triumphant because she helps put Joe Exotic in jail. And Doc is, Doc, he continues to operate. Jeff Lowe ends up in charge of Joe Exotic Zoo. Joe Exotic is the tragic, Hamlet-esque Shakespearean character. What a weird and crazy and insane group of people this was. So let's go through this thing. Spoilers are allowed. So let's start with the obvious. Did Carole Baskin kill her husband? Yeah, she totally killed her husband, right? I mean, there is no question. I've already proposed that there is a fantastic rom-com / suspense film to be made in which Carole Baskin, after killing her new husband, meets O.J. Simpson. They meet cute at a resort. And it's because O.J. wants to buy a tiger or something, or he just wants to adopt a tiger because she doesn't sell tigers. And they meet cute. And then only after they get married do they realize that each one of them is allegedly a murderer. And then they have to figure out exactly who is going to murder I think there's a great movie to be made there I'm going to recommend to Jason Blum. I don't know about you, but yes, she definitely, her husband randomly disappeared, just gone, poof, and he was super rich. And she was a very weird person before that. He was a weird person too, but yeah, did she, no question, she killed her husband, right? The chances she didn't are 0%. As far as whether Joe Exotic really credibly threatened Carole, the evidence there seems kind of mixed, honestly, because it seems as though that Jeff Rowe fellow was really manipulating the entire situation, right? The hitman who was being solicited by Joe Exotic was working for the guy who was trying to steal Joe Exotic's zoo, if I'm getting this correct. So I think there is a real possibility that guy was basically soliciting Joe Exotic to say a thing on tape that was going to be damaging to Joe Exotic, but Joe Exotic didn't actually pay him to kill Carole Baskin. I think that's a possibility. Now, does everyone in this documentary deserve to be in jail? Pretty much everyone deserves to be in jail. But did Joe Exotic credibly threaten Carole? Should Trump pardon Joe Exotic and then make him Secretary of the Interior? There's a possibility. Is Jeff Lowe an evil mastermind? Yeah, I mean, he certainly portrayed that way, right? I mean, okay, so first of all, it's pretty clear that Joe Exotic is supposed to be the hero of this particular piece, and Joe Exotic is a scumbag, right? In the documentary, he's basically trading meth for sex with straight dudes, which is very, very weird and creepy and horrifying, and then falling in love with the straight dudes who are having sex with him for meth, and then singing songs about them and describing graphic carnal acts at their funerals. There's so much in this thing. There's just so much in this thing. But yes, Jeff Lowe appears to be a con artist, right? He appears to be a scam artist. And the idea that he sort of entrapped Joe Exotic, because Joe Exotic happens to be a pre-existing condition crazy person, that seems to me like a fairly good theory. Does that mean that Joe Exotic wasn't guilty of the crime? No. Joe Exotic could have been guilty for the crime, and Jeff Lowe could have been trying to trap him. Both could be true. But Jeff Lowe is a skeezy dude, a very, very skeezy dude. Alrighty, if Tiger King were made into a movie, who would play the main characters is a question I have seen asked before. So if you were going to cast the Tiger King movie, so there's only one obvious casting decision. So there is a character in here who looks like almost exactly like Aaron Eckhart. Eric Kelly is the person. No question that this person is Aaron Eckhart. Then you have who would play Joe Exotic. I've seen the suggestion that maybe it should be Edward Norton. I kind of like Edward Norton as Joe Exotic. Edward Norton's a really good actor, so I could definitely see that. I think there's a world where you have, I'm trying to think who'd be sort of a good comic actor. Maybe Owen Wilson as Joe Exotic. Would that work? McConaughey as Joe Exotic. That would, I guess so. I could see a Laura Dern, Carole Baskin, maybe. She'd have to gain a bunch of weight, obviously. Who else is Carole Baskin? Laura Linney is Carole Baskin. Laura Linney from Ozark. I've seen Stephen Merchant as Howard Baskin. That one makes sense to me. Saf is apparently a transgender person, which I didn't know. Like, if you watch the series, you don't know that Saf is a transgender person because this is clearly a woman who had her arm bit off. But apparently this is a bit of a controversy online. I've heard that Saf does not care about that. Well, I would imagine not, since Saf literally had her arm bit off by a tiger, and then they said we can reattach this, and she was like, F it, I don't need the arm. So who would play Saf? There's some people suggesting Michelle Rodriguez, which I think would work. Oh, now this is a great suggestion. So John Finlay, who is the allegedly meth addicted husband who was straight of Joe Exotic, who spends the entire documentary shirtless. And one of the great things about this documentary is dude's shirtless the entire time, and you never ask why, because everything is just so crazy. That's like the least crazy thing about this documentary. Somebody suggests Shia LaBeouf. Excellent suggestion. Travis Maldonado is the other husband who kills himself. Let's see. I could see Armie Hammer here, maybe. He's maybe a little bit too old. This is a good suggestion. As Doc Antle, as a Bhagavan Doc Antle, I'm seeing suggestions of John Hamm. That is a good call. John Hamm as Doc Antle would totally work. If you were alive, Philip Seymour Hoffman as Doc Antle is dead ringer, right? I mean, like, seriously easy casting. How about Brad Pitt for Jeff Lowe? Could you see it like as a con man, as a kind of charming con man? Yeah, you could see Brad Pitt as Jeff Lowe. Although it doesn't work so well if he's like a handsome dude, right? He has to be kind of not super handsome. He has to be a guy who thinks he's handsome, but is actually not supremely handsome. All right, that's enough thoughts about Tiger King for anybody, and far too many for most. Catch you later.